Welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast, helping you get to your onward journey. A friendly service that helps you get from A to B, or probably nowhere at all.
Hello and welcome to the Model Rail Replacement Podcast. This is episode 11. I am your host, James, and with me is producer and co-host
Sam. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Sam. How are you?
I am going to own up to something. This is the second time that you and I have recorded this episode. So usually I'd be chirpy, happy. But I feel it is a really good point to bring up the fact that we messed up. You and I sat down to record this episode, and towards the end of the episode, we started to perk up. But I think both of us weren't in the right frame of mind when we sat down to record this episode initially. And you and I had a little chat, and we thought, actually, we're sort of doing people a disservice if we go in. And like you could tell, both of us weren't in great moods when we tried to record it. So we're back here for a second time. So I'm coming in very apologetic to everyone. But I'm actually in a very good mood this morning. So hopefully that portrays in this episode as well. How about you? How are you feeling?
Well, I'm the same. So I, yesterday, like you say, we were a bit flat and a bit worn out, and I've been doing a lot of night shifts, so my body clock wasn't the best, and also I'd been stuck on the phone for about 2 hours with Sky trying to negotiate a new contract. So that put me in a not particularly joyous mood. So it was definitely a very flat episode, wasn't it, when we tried to record it? So
yeah, especially at the start. I think towards the end, we sort of realised we got into a swing and a groove of things, and some of the points that we did bring up were really, really good. But I felt, and hopefully you agree, that the episode in total would have done a disservice to those listening to it, and I don't think that's fair. Like, although it is a free publication, like we have people who give us so much good feedback and support us and share us, that if we put out what I would believe to be a subpar episode, I think that'd be really unfair to them.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, we don't want to put anything out half-assed. That if and you can tell when you're listening to someone's voice if someone's interested or not. And if we don't sound interested, you're not going to sound interested. The listener isn't going to be interested, are they, in listening? Yeah, we're back again.
We're back again, and both of us in much better moods. But what's really good about that is that links really, really nicely with the main segment of today's episode, in the sense that sometimes you do have to step away from something and redo it and ask questions and take a step back and go, am I doing the right thing? And you do have to take your time and do things. You can't necessarily rush everything just because you're trying to get something done so you can move on to the next step. And I think that ties perfectly with what we're talking about today. So, James, what's today's episode about?
So today we are going to talk about layout planning. So previously we've talked about fiddle yards and considering what you need when adding that to your layout, but we've not actually discussed the whole layout in terms of your scenery, your track, what you want on it, how you're going to wire it, run it, etc., even your budget. So yeah, this week's section will be about layout planning before starting the project.
Now, I know from talking to you yesterday that you've had a decent hobby week. So, as if this hasn't happened, James, how's your week been in the hobby?
So my week's been pretty good. And one of the reasons is because the children are away, have gone to see their nan. So that always gives me a bit of extra time to actually get things done. And the layout has progressed nicely, in which I've now got the road bed, because I'm obviously doing a sort of open baseboard construction, is now 3/4 of the way around the room. There's just put the swing gate area he's doing, a bit of track laying, and then hopefully I should have a couple of running lines to get some trains running around on. So that's all very exciting. And then even better is that sometime today, Mr. DPD is going to be knocking on my door and delivering me at least 4 Class 66s from Accurascale. So that's also very exciting. Swiftly on their way to me. And so that gives me a bit more encouragement to get the track down and all round so I can start running these locos.
Excellent. And for the 4 that are meant to be turning up today, what are the liveries that you've got coming?
Oh, let me have a think. Right, the EWS 66171, DB Shanker Red, GBRF Blue, and their charity one that they've done, the GBRF prostate cancer locomotive.
Okay.
Yeah, very exciting. None of them are sort of sound, because obviously ordered a few, and that would have sort of blown the budget kind of thing. So I've only got one Sound Loco ordered, but that hasn't been sent yet. So I'm waiting for Evening Star, and they'll get to test out their capabilities. If I like it, I might buy a few more sound chips from them because they usually launch sound, their DCC chips a couple of weeks after the Locos go out. So we'll wait and see on that one.
Nice. I'm really excited to see what the sound's like on them because I've heard plenty of 66s with sound from other factory fitted ones and the aftermarket ones. So I'm really intrigued to see what the Akira Scale one sounds like because that is just something that everybody who buys an Akira Scale Loco talks about is how good the sound files are on them. So
the Class 37s are amazing sound files on them. They're just so good. So yeah, it's interesting with the 66s.
Are both your Class 37 Akira Scale sound fitted?
One that's already sound fitted, one to be sound fitted, and then the other three will just be DCC. I got a bit carried away with the 37s last year.
That's good though. I mean, at least if you can run them and you have the space to have them on your layout, that's absolutely fine. The joys with having locomotive driven trains is that it's really easy to swap the locos in and out from your fiddle yard. It's a lot easier doing that than having multiple units trying to switch them in and out, I find. That is one of the better things of having sort of like rakes of coaches is you can go, right, I've seen that 33 running with that rake of coaches for a while. I'm going to take that out, put 73 in, and then you can do things like that. So that is one of the beauties of having lots of locos versus lots of multiple units in a sense.
Indeed. That's the part of my plan with my layout is to have the depot. So your train runs around into the fiddle yard, and then you take another loco off the depot, run it into the fiddle yard so it hooks up onto the other end of the train because you can get in and out on any line. And then the train will then come back out in the other direction with a fresh loco on the front of it. So
that's cool.
Yeah, gives it a bit more operational style, I thought.
Nice.
Anyway, how about you? What have you been up to this week?
So this week has been a very weathering heavy week. I have worked across 3 different scales over the course of this week. I've had an N-Gage Steam Era commission on the go, which is quite nice. N-Gage weathering is... I love oil paints as my primary source of getting things grubby and dirty. But on N-Gage, I do think that the airbrush works perfectly on it, and the customer is a repeat customer, and they're really happy with just having the airbrush rather than airbrush and oils on it. So that's always nice. And it's quite a therapeutic one to do with N-Gage because what you're working on doesn't take up the entire desk. I've also got a 00 gauge one, which has got you even told me this yesterday when we first tried recording this. It's not a Pendolino, it's a
Voyager.
Virgin Voyager, thank you. I've got a Virgin Voyager set that needs doing. And then I have, the main focus of this week has been an O gauge commission, which has, I think it's safe to say, put my desk under immense amounts of strain. The Class 33 that comes with it, I've posted pictures of it up on Instagram and a couple of videos. It's huge. It's so heavy. I've had to effectively put it on a wooden plank to spin it around because my Lazy Susan that I have is too small, and also I worry it would break under the weight of the loco. So I had to put it on a plank of wood and basically turn the plank of wood around on my desk. So when you're weathering, you don't necessarily want to be touching bogies, buffers, or anything like that because you don't want to then put a massive fingerprint smudge on what you've been working on. That's been supported by, so that was the Class 33 Network Southeast and a Rake of 4 Mark 1 Network Southeast coaches. Customers clearly listened to our ad and heard that it's a good idea to, if you're working on sort of like a big rake of things, then get the loco done with the oils and the airbrush, and then get the rolling stock done with the airbrush. And I think it looks really, really good. The only problem being is that with O gauge, I can't, first of all, I don't have a layout to put it on to sort of frame it. And I also don't have the space to be able to lay out all of the rake in a line without you seeing sort of my daughter's toys in the background, or the playroom, or the mess that is our house as we're packing everything up. So that's the only shame about doing that commission. I can't really show it off, but I'm hoping that when this customer gets it on their layout, they'll be able to send me some really nice pictures or some videos of it running, because it is an absolute beauty. And it has really, really tempted me to have some sort of, I don't think I'll ever have a rolling stock heavy layout, but it has tempted me to do like a really small shunting puzzle on an O gauge scale, which means maybe it would be a steam rather than a diesel one. But then if they do another great deal on an Class 8 shunter, that might be what tempts me. Now that I've seen it in person, I think that could really tempt me.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that's the thing with O Gauge. That's sort of what tempted me is all those wonderful layouts at exhibitions. They just look so good. It's just, yeah. I really want to model in that. But yeah, that's cool. That sounds great. And the layout that this 33 and coaches will be displayed on is one that people would have seen already, isn't it? This is Patrick Lane.
It is Patrick Lane, which was created by our friend of the show, Neil from the Little Layout Company. I've seen pictures of it. You got to see it in person. And from what you said, it was an absolutely beautiful layout. It's a nuclear flask layout, I believe, is the term of what type of yard it is.
Yes. So yeah, it's a nuclear flask layout. Yeah, it was a really lovely layout. And yeah, I've got some footage on my YouTube channel of it from the Model World live show. None of it recorded by me. It's all recorded by my boy. Most of that video is recorded by him. So yeah, he's getting quite good with the old camera.
That's good. That's really, really good. I do like because you did a day out on one of your heritage railways, and you even said that there were a couple of clips that were filmed by the boy, and I thought the camera work was outstanding considering he's only a young lad. So yeah, kudos to him.
Yeah, no, he's really getting the hang of it. So yeah, in fact, that heritage railway one is mostly him. Mostly, it was a trip out for his birthday, basically. So he wanted to record it. Well, it's your birthday, so you go have the camera.
Nice. That's really cool. In terms of stuff for me, I've been working on the control panel for my points for the fiddle yard. That's been quite fun and tedious at the same time. I think if I was doing it again, I might get a custom acrylic sheet done by Bunter's Yard. For now, I've bought the plastic, I've drilled the holes. If I really muck it up, I'll give Dave a call and say, look, I need a custom one doing that actually looks okay. But holes are drilled, that's the main thing. And then finally, I do have a hobby purchase that I've picked up. So you've heard me talking about class 92s. One popped up on as Ellis Clark trains in the Caledonian livery for a price that was below what a lot of people are asking for on eBay. And I think it was DCC fitted, and it was about the same as the original asking price. So I'm blown away. I haven't had a chance for it to stretch its legs yet, but I do have a small area where I'll be able to set up a rolling road just to check that everything is okay. So I'm very excited about that because I didn't think I'd be getting one anytime soon. One popped up for the right price at the same sort of time when I actually had some spare cash to blow on it. So there we go. I finally got my first ever Accurascale loco.
There you are. Awesome stuff. That's very cool. And then hopefully enough people have gone and told Accurascale they want to see the Mark V's return. So and you'll be able to get a couple of them to go behind the back of it.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I don't know if I'd go for a rake of 8 or a rake of 4 because a rake of 8 would look glorious, but at the same time, who am I kidding? I'll probably buy 8. Let's just ignore that even in the slightest. I'd probably go for a Glasgow Edinburgh set, and then that way it would be similar to the one that I went on back at the beginning of the year.
That'd be quite cool. That's and then yeah, you can always run that one on my layout because obviously it won't suit your era, but it suits mine.
That could be the cultural exchange engine that comes and runs on your layout.
You can come live here, and you can take ownership of my 33, and that can just live on yours. We're sorted.
I don't feel comfortable taking ownership of your 33, mainly because I know how much or sentimentality hides behind it. So I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with that one.
Yeah, that's a very, very special one to me.
Yeah,
that one. Cool. Shall we move on to the news?
Yes, let's look at the news. And for those who listened to last week's episode, told you.
Yes, the force is strong with this one, as Sam had foreseen everything and predicted that Accurascale would be making an announcement. And you said that. And then I think about 4 hours later on Instagram, Accurascale announced their announcement. So, yeah.
Although I was very wrong with what it was going to be.
Miles off. We were miles off. But I think most people were, weren't they, when you looked at the comments on Instagram and that. I think 8F was the most popular sort of expectation. There's a lot of people speculating that one. A lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, I know a company's going to make an 8F. I know one's been measured up or whatever." But yeah, no, as it stands, it's not Accurascale. It might be in the future, but no, it was just there. I think it's a 21-ton BR Hopper Wagon, I think they've announced, which is an OO gauge version of the O gauge version that they have previously done.
Mm.
The O gauge version is an absolutely beautiful model of a wagon, and this one looks really nice as well. But it definitely was a bit flat, I think, in its reveal when the expectation had got quite high. But it wasn't a Curioscale's fault, I don't think. I think it was more everyone else on social media hyping it up in the comments.
I think that's the thing. We as a community, and it happens in the Warhammer community as well. It happens in every fandom community. I'm sure it happens with you in Star Wars. It happens in other fandoms I'm not going to mention because I've been slandered across Instagram and the but it happens in that community as well.
I
But
say that well, we need to talk about that real, don't we?
we do. We'll come back round to that one. But I think people just get themselves bang at it, and then when it doesn't meet their expectations, people get really annoyed or sad. But I can understand that when it's a 45-minute announcement that gives you nothing. But when it's one of these small ones, I think you have to cut Curioscale some slack. They didn't lie with their guesses that they gave. It's just that people read too much into it. I think the joy is that this got announced on the, I think it was the Wednesday night, and then or was it the Thursday night? I can't remember.
The announcement of the announcement was on the Wednesday, I think, and then the product reveal was on the Friday morning.
That was it. So unlike some places where they go, here's 2 weeks before we make our announcement, they had a couple of days. So the speculation could only go on so much. So I think they did a good job. And whilst it's not something I would personally buy, I think they do look really, really good. So if you don't know what we're talking about, they are 21-ton BR grey hoppers. They're also known as the Hop 21, the HTO, and the HTV hoppers. And they come in a variety of liveries. They come in a set of 3. And unlike previous Curioscale announcements and wagon packs, they're usually, or they have been previously, £75 for 3. These ones are going to be £99.88. Sorry, £99.98 for a set of 3. So there is a price rise, which you do have to take into consideration. James, we spoke about this in the original attempt at doing this episode, but you said that you believe that the Curioscale's prices have actually been quite low for quite some time. Is that still something that you believe in after sitting on it for a day?
Yeah. When you think about their prices compared to other models, I think the best example is their prices of a Class 37 compared to the price of a Bachmann 37. It's an incredibly low price in comparison. Now, I know there's some people that are in the Curioscale camp and some people are in the Bachmann camp, and it's it's a vote with your wallet kind of thing of which way you want to go with those models. For a very long time now, I think Curioscale have kept their prices at a very good, reasonable price, and a price increase like this, I don't think is the end of the world, and it shouldn't be an unexpected thing. Everything is getting more and more expensive, and you can't just expect these companies to keep everything at the same forever and ever, because otherwise they'll go out of business, and that'll be far worse for the model rail community, because then they'll be moaning that no one's making any models because they're all gone. Yeah, it's not too bad, and I think they have their 15% offer that they announced just before they announced the wagon, so it's almost like they had a marketing strategy in place, and I think it works out about £85 a pack if you bought 5. So in that case, it's only about a £10 increase on your packs of wagons. And most people will probably end up buying a nice rake of wagons from them in the various packs.
Yeah.
So it's not only it's a massive dent into the wallet, and it's probably something that should have been expected eventually anyway.
I think when it first got announced, I was quite shocked at the price hike. But after sitting on it for a few days, I've very much gone back in my box and thought, actually, they do price things a lot fairer than some of the other companies, like you said about their 37s and things like that. So yeah, it's a price hike, but maybe it's a price hike that's completely worth it. I guess when you get these wagons, you'll be able to make that decision yourself. And there's plenty of people online who do have a look at these and say, would I pay, I think it's £33.33 if you split the set up? Would I pay £34 for a wagon like this? So then break that down when you start adding your discounts and stuff like that in. Would I pay X amount for this wagon at that price? And when you think that there's a lot of wagons out there that come out now at £40 that are probably about the same as this, we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, your bogey wagons, I think, with Bachmann are hitting about the £50 mark now. So 2 axle wagons, yeah, you probably are expecting around £30 to £35 per wagon. And if you look at the detail, because they put some engineering prototype sample photos out, the detail on that, there's a lot of little fiddly bits on that wagon from the looks of things. So that is probably, a lot of labour costs in the factory to put into it. So I'm sure they'll look absolutely fabulous once people get them, and especially when they're weathered, because those things look great when they're like really dirty and all rusty and everything. So yeah, they'll be nice to see in the future.
They definitely sit in the same sort of category as like oil tanker wagons and things like that, or ventilated vans where there's loads of areas for the dirt, the grime to build up, and it doesn't matter how many times you wash it, you can't always get that dirt and grime out of the creases and cracks and crevices. So yeah, I think they will look absolutely outstanding, fully weathered up.
So yeah, that's a Curious Scale covered. This week as well, Hornby's TT120 range got bigger. The Class 50 has finally arrived. For those been patiently waiting for that. I think it's only 2 of the guises at the moment. So Hornby announced 3. They've got the BR Blue. They've got Edward Elgar in the Great Western Green. 50007 Hercules was repainted into. And the future model will be the GBRF. I can't remember which one of the 2 they're doing, but that's sort of the modern era ones. But I think, yeah, this is great for anyone who wants to model in TT. There's the Mark IIs have also arrived in Intercity livery and BR blue and grey. So if you are looking sort of 1970s to 1980s modelling in that scale, I think you're pretty sorted to have a pretty good layout now, because you've got the 08 shunter in BR blue if you can get hold of it. We've got the blue and Intercity Swallow HSTs, and now you've got these 50s and the Mark II coaches. So there's a nice little setup building up there, I think.
Yeah, and if I was going to jump into TT, this would be what won me, is doing probably the BR blue large logo with a rake of the Intercity coaches. I don't know if I'd go BR blue or the Intercity Swallow, because I think they both look great being pulled by a large logo 50, but definitely this is something that when I first saw the TT announcement, when it was first announced and they said they were doing a 50, I was like, oh, that might swing me. The problem is I've got so much rolling stock now that's in 00 gauge that I don't think I could go down to, plus I've just built a fiddle yard, I don't think I could go down to a TT scale. But this would definitely be something, especially if you're looking at running long passenger trains that are 9 coaches long. This is definitely something that you could easily get into, and I can't think for the life of me. I think they're about 20 centimeters each, the coaches, which from the 30 centimeters you have for roughly a Mark II coach anyway, it's dropping down over the course of a rake quite a considerable amount. So I imagine you could fit a bigger station in very easily in this scale.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you look at a full length HST and 00 gauge, you're usually looking around 9 feet, and I believe that the TT HST is about 5.5 to 6 feet. So that's a considerable saving of space. Like you're saying, if you want to do a station, but it makes all the difference with how much of that area the station is going to take up. So yeah, I think it'd be quite good, and I wouldn't be surprised now to see a few sort of 1980s base layouts, because you've got the wagons as well that can go with it, and there's some BR vans you can get, and then you've got the coal hopper wagons, the merry-go-round ones will come into it. You've got the TTA tanks, so there's definitely, I think, enough there to start modelling something a bit more proper, probably a bit more than the actual steam era, because with the LNER stuff, you've only got the Pacifics and you've got that J50 tank coming, but even there you're quite limited in what you could actually model. So I think 70s to 80s is probably the best period to go for at the moment in TT if you want something a little more realistic.
Yeah, God, having the HST and Swallow livery and the 50 with a set of Swallow coaches, or even a BR blue rake of it would just look great. And obviously we've teased a little bit on what you could do in terms of coming up in the episode and how layout planning would massively change if you switch to TT. I think that's a really interesting point, where if you're struggling for space and you don't want to go to N scale because it's too small, maybe this is your chance to jump in.
Yeah, definitely. And on that note, I think maybe we should talk about how you would plan that sort of thing.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea.
We're going to take a short break and be right back.
Look at that! You see that there? The super shiny diesel loco that's coming this way. Yeah, I see it. Isn't it beautiful? So fresh, so clean, like it's straight out of the box. I mean, yeah, it's nice, but I prefer it to have a used look to it. In an ideal world, that would be nice. But I'm sure the owner doesn't have the confidence, skill or time to undertake such a job. Then why don't they just send it to Emperor's Path? Emperor's Path? Yeah. SBJ has years of experience in model railways and wargaming, the ability to meet your weathering needs, and works with you during the whole process to ensure the project is how you want it, not like it's come through a factory. Come on, that must cost a fortune. Not really. He offers different levels of weathering at really affordable prices. I've got my whole fleet weathered by him. My loco's got the full treatment, whilst my rolling stock just a dusting with the airbrush, and it looks really authentic. I might just get a quote. How do I contact him? You get him on Instagram at emperors_path, by Facebook, Emperor's Path, or emperorspathcontact@gmail.com. Emperor's Path Weathering. If it's not filthy, let's change that.
And we are back, and this week we are going to talk about layout planning. So there are many things to consider when layout planning, and there's lots to take in, lots to think about, and it's always best just to take a step back and actually decide what you're going to do before you cut that first piece of wood to build your layout. So Sam, I don't know about you, but when it comes to layouts for me, I think the first thing is to actually decide where you're going to put your layout.
Yeah, that's a very clear thing to think of. I mean, I know there's plenty of people out there who do like a plank that can go up and down in their like dining room and stuff like that. But for those who are building a proper layout, where are you going to put it? Like, where is your designated space for this? Is it something that needs to be able to go up and down regularly? That's the kind of thing that you need to think about. That's whether it's going to be your room, your loft, your garage, your shed, your shelf. Where do you put it? And I imagine when you were planning your layout, obviously you decided quite quickly where it needs to go, and it's going to go in your garage because that's your biggest space that you have where you can put this.
Yeah, so yeah, that's, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when we went house hunting, it was on the needs to have list that there needed to be somewhere for me to have a model railway. So either, you know, a nice large loft or a garage or enough garden space that I could install a large shed. And yeah, this one just so happened to have a very nice long garage that looks suitable to put the layout in. And unfortunately, the pitch of the roof is a bit too low to go up there. Otherwise, it could have been right up in the loft. I also had the choice. I could have had the large shed in the garden as well. I was spoiled for choice, really. But that's one of the things to consider is where you put it, and it's also how much money you are willing to spend for housing your layout, and also how much you are willing to spend on actually building a layout. Because let's be honest about this, model railways can be a very, very expensive hobby. So as you say, I opted for the garage. The garage is not a suitable location comfort-wise to spend many hours in. As they are, you know, with a big fold down door at one end with a nice gap under it for the air to blow through. It's usually dark, it's dusty and dirty. So with mine, you know, I've kitted it out and, you know, put some insulation in. I put some plasterboard up just so I could have some nice walls and paint it, adjust the lighting. There's all these things to consider. I mean, your layout is, well, the one you had was in the loft, and I think in your house move, you're again going to go for the loft. So that again is something that was on your to have list when house hunting.
It was very much a case of when we moved in this house, I wasn't doing model railways. I was still doing Warhammer and things like that, and I just needed an office where I could paint and do my hobby and stuff like that. And when you put your table up to play the game and stuff, you can do that downstairs in the living room and just put a nice big sheet of MDF or ply on top of it, and then you make your battleground as you see fit. So this house was never purchased with the idea of putting a layout in there. So when I started building it, it was very much a case of I just wanted to run trains. And this comes back to what I am going to keep saying over and over again is take your time, work out what it is you need, work out how much space you actually have. Because I basically went up there with and just made lots of 4x2 foot boards and just centered them in a big U shape, and then basically put what can only be described as a really flimsy 1 foot wide board underneath the eaves so that I could make a complete circuit. And I think that was a terrible idea. Whereas the house that we're moving into, whilst it wasn't necessarily the focal point, it had to have a loft that was already done up. It was certainly a big selling point for us. And the fact that the loft, even with all of the insulation and all of the bits put in there to make it a livable room, you do lose space in that essence. And I think you mentioned it with yours that you lost space by insulating it, but you kind of have to do that. And I looked at it and went, wow, I could definitely fit X amount in here. And my initial thought when I went up there was, right, okay, I can have 17 by 14 foot layout that goes around the entirety of the loft, and I can do it that way. But then forgetting that I also need to make sure that the whole reason we're having it where we're having a loft that's done up is so that I can have my weathering desk. So I can actually have a hobby desk to do all of my bits and bobs in. You have to take all of these things in because, like you say, yours might not be a comfortable space to sit in all of the time. And even with it done up, I mean, do you have a desk in your hobby area, or is that something that's inside the house?
So that is, in truth, in many plans, because I've obviously changed many layout designs over the years, and the hobby desk is definitely something that gets forgotten about. So even now with my current design, what I've got, I have one on casters that just wheels underneath one section of the layout, and then I'll just pull it out and work on it. But it's not the most ideal space, but it's sort of that sacrifice I put in there to allow more layout in the room.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need to have the loft or the garage. Those are sort of, I think, ideal locations when you're more established in the hobby.
Yeah.
I think to start off with, it doesn't hurt to build a very small layout. And like you say, planning and taking your time is usually very good. And you don't necessarily need to, even if you want to build a really big layout, you could just build one section that you then later add on to.
Yeah.
So you could build like a small shunting layout that then becomes part of, your branch line yard or whatever, and that then adds onto the main line later on that then gets built around the room. I think the most ideal choice for people, if they have the luxury, is to use the spare room.
Yeah.
Because you've then cut out all those costs of having to insulate your space and heat it and lighting, etc. And it's just a little more sociable, I think, if you're in the house in a bedroom, rather than hiding up in the loft or out in the garden. But then again, it all depends because other people in the house might not appreciate the Class 37 crashing around the layout, screaming, that nice noise from it.
Yeah, it's a noise that we like, but may not be appreciated by everyone else in the household.
Yeah, definitely. So it's where you're going to locate it is definitely something to think about, and depending who you're building it for as well. Kids, you can, even you can do it as an adult as well if you want to, but building a layout that fits under a bed, so it can come out and be set up that way. I've seen someone who built a layout that could be taken down and stored in the wardrobe. One of the most unusual ones, I think, is a stairwell. They built the layout in the stairwell.
Okay.
So sometimes you can think out the box of where to locate your layout. Like you said, there's shelf layouts. They're always quite popular. Obviously bookcases. So people put them in bookcases, coffee tables. You can get an N-gauge layout. And there's a nice, I don't know if they still do it, but IKEA a few years ago did a very nice sized glass lid coffee table, and I had seen someone selling that coffee table on eBay with a absolutely beautiful N-gauge layout built in it. So yeah, you don't necessarily need that big space, but you do need to think where you're going to put it because it will take up some space somewhere in your house.
Yeah, and I think that leads in really nicely to how big are you doing the layout, because one of the things, I think this goes for a lot of people when they first start their first ever layout train set, whether it's as a kid, as an adult, whatever time in your life you do it, there's that thing of everyone gets like an 8x6 piece of plywood that they can put 2 ovals on, and it's a massive piece. If you cannot reach around every single side of that, it then becomes a problem. So then that's when you have to look at, is it better to have smaller sections that go around the outside of the room? Is it better to have an end-to-end layout so that actually you're only taking up 1, 2, maybe 3 walls in the actual room without actually sort of maybe covering the door or something like that. And it's about how comfortable you are reaching over those baseboards, because that played a massive part in my design for the new layout for me. I feel when it comes to scenics, 2 foot is the maximum I would prefer to have. I think 18 inches deep is a really good size, especially for a beginning layout or something that you want that's a little bit more simplistic. 18 inches gives you enough that if you have maybe 1 or 2 tracks in it and it's just sort of like a pass through, that's a really good size. If you have something that's like a giant yard, then you can sort of expand it a little bit more. But for me, I can safely reach 2 foot across a layout without sort of damaging things too much. Because imagine that you've got this big, beautiful station that's at the back of your layout, and you're reaching across trying to get something that's behind there. The deeper the layout is, the higher the chance of you breaking something as you're reaching over for it. So taking into consideration your reach factor, shall we say? That's probably the best way to word it. What's your reach factor on the layout? If you've got this massive 8x6 piece of ply that you've got access to all around, that's not too bad, because effectively at most points on it, you should be able to reach across to the center of the board if you need to. I know some people do it where they then cut the center out and they cut out a lot of the ability to have maybe shunting and stuff like that, but they've got a space in the middle where they can go up in between and they can reach around everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, once you've decided where you're going to put your layout, it's to consider, yeah, like you say, how big you're going to make your layout. I think you need to consider your budget and how much you are willing to spend on this hobby, because even the woodwork can eat into your money quite quickly.
Oh, big time.
I think the last time I went to Wixted to buy some wood for my layout, and this is just for a newer section I plan to build a little bit later on. I ended up spending about it was £180 on I think 3 sheets of plywood and some softwood and some few other bits. It was a really expensive trip out. So that's something to consider. It's also what you actually want the model. You need to think about how you can model it, because we talk about O gauge a lot on this show because we're always in awe of it. And I think it's the beauty of it, the detail of it, how fantastic it looks. But neither of us, I mean, I know I have bought a O gauge model, but we're not really O gauge modelers, and that's because we don't have the space for O gauge.
Yeah.
And that's that sacrifice that both of us have made that decision and gone, no, I can't fit that into the space for what I'd like to model, because for me, I'd like to, have a nice main line with another sort of junction for another line coming off it. In my space, N gauge would be the best scale to model that scenario. However, I feel N is a bit too small in that size of layout, that it would just get lost. The train at the other end of the room, you could barely see it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I've opted for OO gauge, and that's definitely something to think about before you start going out and buying everything. And like you say, and then depending on your scale, would depend on how deep you want your boards, because 1 foot, O gauge is not a very wide board. You're not going to get a lot of senior on it. You can do a nice little shunting puzzle layout or something like that, maybe a nice branch line terminus, but anything too detailed is not really going to fit on there. However, when you come to N gauge, N is essentially, well, they say half the size, but I think it's actually from a third dimension. I think it's a quarter of the size, and you can get a lot more in a 1 foot baseboard than you in N gauge than you can in OO gauge.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all these factors to consider before you even go out and purchase anything. And I think one of the best ways to make your decision is to go to model railway exhibitions and have a look at what other people have done and what they have made, what can be achieved in certain sizes, what can't be achieved. Because once you've decided your space, your budget, what era you're going to model, you're more likely then going to sit down with either pen and paper or a computer software like AnyRail, and in these instances, AnyRail is probably actually better, because it's so easy to sit down with that pen and paper and scribble out an idea. And we've all been there when it comes to the actual design stage of, I want my layout, and I want a station, I want a depot, I want a freight yard, or a turntable would be nice. Oh, I need a river. I might have a viaduct actually. I'll have also, I think I have a branch line on it too. The list starts getting really, really long, and you've only got, let's go with a classic 6 foot by 4 foot of space. You're not going to fit that on there.
No.
Even in N-gauge, that's going to be a struggle to fit all that in there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the next stage in the planning process really is to really have a think about what you'd like to have and what you think your layout really needs. So yeah, you might think that I want to do a station layout and I would like to have a depot with it, but when it comes to the design process, you might find that you only have enough space for the station and the depot have to be left out.
That's a really good point that reminds me of something we spoke about yesterday when we first tried this. I used as an example, because you've signaled this region, so you can give me facts, you can give me distances. I use the fact that when I stay up in West London for work, I usually stay near Heathrow Airport. So if I do want to do something with my evening, whether it's go meet up with friends or something like that, I can get the train from Heathrow Airport, and you basically go in for a majority of it. You go on the Elizabeth line and you're outside going along the same route that you would go into Paddington. And the things that you pass there, James, you know what's along there. But using just the two examples that you've given of you want a depot, but you also want a station, the depot and the station are actually very far apart. In a lot of instances, you don't have the depot as close to a station as you may think that you do. And that's when you have to start really thinking about first of all, how realistic do you want to be? Are you somebody who has to be 100%, this needs to be to scale? Are you someone who wants to maybe say, okay, maybe they wouldn't be this close in real life, but I'm going to narrow it down so they're fairly close to each other? Or are you someone who's going to try and shove it all into one place because that's the things that you want and that's what you enjoy about the hobby, which is absolutely fine. But James, as someone who knows the line, just give me a rough idea between Heathrow and Paddington. What do you have that people would tend to model on the line?
Yeah, so between Heathrow and Paddington, that is about 12 miles of the Great Western Main Line. So even in your example of the station and the depot, so if we were saying Paddington, I want to model Paddington Station and Old Oak Common. Between those two locations is actually 3 miles. No one really has the space for 3 miles of track in what they're modeling. I think Heaton Lodge, that O gauge layout, the massive one, I don't even think that reaches a mile in his model length. I think watching his video the other day. So that is a massive space from Heathrow to Paddington. So that's 12 miles, and that is like I say, that's a great example of seeing the railway world and thinking, I want to model that, I want to model that, I want to model that, I want to model that. You could come off the airport branch line through Hayes Station, and immediately on, in the direction of travel towards Paddington, on your left is Hayes Tarmac. That's your first freight yard that you see. All these industrial silos and all that looks quite grotty and grimy, just plonked, on the outskirts of London. It's an attractive thing to model, and it looks very interesting. There's a bit of shunting that goes on there, so you think, yeah, maybe I'd like to model that. Then you get to Southall, and on the right-hand side of travel, you've got, first of all, Southall Yard. There's a few wagons dumped in there. There's siding for some of the engineering machines that they get put away, and then you've also got Southall West Coast Railway shed. So they're all stored there. You usually see a rake of their coaches, a couple of their locos are stored outside. Next to that is the Brentford branch that goes off towards a couple of yards in Brentford itself. One of them being the waste distribution, where all the rubbish trains pick up the containers, and there's a stone terminal down there. And then on the left-hand side, as you pass through Southall, you then get to Hanwell Sidings. There are a couple of loops, but these days, due to internal politics, Freightliner marshal all the Mendip Stone trains there. Then we pass on through Hanwell Station itself, and then we come up to West Ealing. And again, on your left, you've got West Ealing Depot, where Great Western keep their 387s to be serviced. Next to that is Plaza's Depot, where the engineering machines, like your tampers, your stone blowers, etc., all get serviced. There's two diverging routes, so it sort of forms a triangle there that both go off towards Greenford. And on one of the routes is a level crossing there itself, and everyone likes to have a level crossing on their layout. That's always an attraction. Then you come through to West Ealing Station. You get to Acton. After passing Ealing Broadway, and you've then got Acton Yard. Acton Yard itself would take up, I think, a garage and a half if you were to model it in, to scale. It's got 3 reception lines, and it's got sort of various other sidings in there. There's another stone terminal. There's quite a few of them on that patch. And this is before you're even anywhere near Paddington Station. And then eventually you will pass Old Oak Common. So the old Old Oak Common's been knocked down and being replaced by this HS2 station that's coming in. But you've got the MTR Old Oak Common depot on your left-hand side. On your right-hand side, you've got the Hitachi North Pole depot that used to be the old Eurostar shed that they now service the Class 800s in. And then 3 miles later, you will eventually get to Paddington Station, and even then, you're running side by side to the London Underground. So there's all that going on in that 12 miles, and you're only probably on the train for about 20 minutes between those, depending which train you're on.
Yeah,
and it's so easy to look at all that and go, "I'd love to model all that," but you'd never get all that on your layout.
Really make some compromises. You'd have to squish stuff down. You'd have to make which is okay if you're willing to do those things, but it's just. That is the perfect example of when you see all of these things where they're all put together in such short succession. It goes, here are the compromises that we are making as hobbyists. So when you see someone who's done something like this, cut them some slack. Or if you're somebody who has done this, and this happens so frequently, where someone gets on their high horse and says, well, actually, you shouldn't be doing that on the railway. And you go look at their layout and it's like, oh, they've slammed all this stuff together. It's like, well, actually, you shouldn't be doing that on your railway. So just calm down. And you made a really, really good point about in previous discussions about Paddington is, did you say it's 13 platforms on Paddington?
Yeah, Paddington is made of 13 platforms.
So let's try and spitball. For 4 platforms on my old layout, it was 2 foot and it felt squashed. If you were modeling 13 platforms and we're talking 4 platforms as 2 foot, we're looking at quite the distance that you'd need to cover to be able to put all of those platforms in if you wanted to model Paddington.
Oh yeah, width is definitely.
Like, let alone the length, because I mean Paddington is far longer than the eight coach units that you sometimes see sat in there, aren't they?
So you can get they run up to 10 car IETs, usually 2 5 cars coupled together. They'll fit comfortably in most of those platforms there. Some of them are a bit shorter. Platform 14 being the shortest. But platform 1 is a really, really long platform. It's the longest platform at Paddington Station. And that's usually where your steam tours are going, because they have the extra coaches on there, and that's the best place to fit them. So yeah, you are probably, I think, just the platforms alone, you're probably looking around 3 foot per platform, remembering that it's all on a curve as well. Because everything's curved in Paddington. You've got all that, and then you've got I think they just call it the green, or the lawn. Sorry, yeah, the lawn is the forecourt beyond the platforms.
Yeah.
So you'd probably want to model that too, because if you were doing the station roof, you'd want that part. You'd want the station buildings that hold the roof up surrounding it. You're probably 6 feet, 7 feet, just for platform area maybe in length, and that's probably compressing it.
Yeah.
Scale length, I don't know. Maybe I feel like, no, hang on. What we're talking 9 feet for HST.
Yeah.
Adding all those other bits on, yeah, I'd reckon probably 12 to 15 foot, maybe, just for Paddington Station.
Yeah. And that's not including maybe the point work going into the station, all of the different lines that you've got going in there. Because at some points there's probably 6 lines in the throat to the station. Is that right?
Yeah. There's six lines. There's a hell of a lot of point work in there. If you're modeling all that, I mean, it costs you a fortune in points just to model the throat.
Yeah,
it would be a big challenge to model Paddington Station. So yeah, if you wanted to do something like that, I think you either have to compromise and cut down and just decide that you'll build a version of Paddington Station. And I think I've seen people do that before. I think McKinley have a Paddington Station on their layout, don't they? But it's probably about 4 platforms or something like that.
It's definitely condensed, and this is something that I think you could easily do if you were going to try and do this. And the whole idea is, and I said this to you, the idea, we do so many scenes on our railways where scenes just finish in terms of you go over a bridge and then that's where the layout ends, and then you don't see what's going on there. But we never do that when it comes to the actual railway side of it. And I think if you wanted to model Paddington, you could either do it where you only do 4 platforms, but you get the aesthetic of Paddington in there. And the idea is that off the baseboard are the rest of the other 10 platforms. Or what you could do, and you came up with a fantastic idea, and I'm gutted that most of what we talked about yesterday wasn't as usable as what we had hoped, but actually this section, I think, and you made a really good point. You can almost do it where you model the station as if you're a train spotter. So they're on the end of platform 4, let's say, for example, and they're taking those photos, and you're only getting all that's in there. And you can model it so that the point, like you've got lines that are going off towards what would in theory be the other platforms if you wanted to, but the idea that you don't necessarily have to do all of a station. You can do platforms 1 to 4 and you can leave off the other 10. Like, that's completely doable. You're making those compromises, but that's a much better compromise than losing your absolute mind trying to squeeze 14 platforms into a 4-foot area.
Yeah, definitely. That's the beauty of it, because when it comes to your planning as well, like nowadays, a lot of us as modelers will like to show our work off on social media, either via YouTube or Instagram. I know some people like to use Twitter, Facebook. So there's all these various places where you can show your work off. And because of that, you are in control of the narrative. So if you just model, as you say, from platform 4 to platform 1 of Paddington and just have your camera at a certain angle, the viewer will never know that the rest of the platforms are not there because they can't see that. And so therefore you can paint that illusion that this is a Paddington station, is one of the busier parts, and here the train's coming in and out of the station. If you're not happy with that, you can always look at alternatives. You don't have to go for Paddington. You could just look round London and think, well, I want a London terminus. Paddington's too big, Euston's too big, Waterloo is too big. What can I do? What about Marylebone Station? In the days of the Great Central, I think Marylebone only had 4 platforms for a London terminus. That's pathetic. But for a modeler, that's great. Nowadays, Chiltern, I think they opened up one of the centre where there was going to be some platforms that got built in. I think they opened it up at some point, and there's 6 platforms there now, and that would still make quite an interesting model, especially with the way that they permissively work all their DMUs into there to really utilise the space in that station. But if you took it back towards the 90s, late 80s, when Network Southeast were running that line, Marylebone is a fantastic location modelling wise, in the fact that it was just the 4 platforms. There was a DMU depot literally at the end of the platform. You could see it. And then across the tracks on the other side was a turntable. And Marylebone was quite popular for running the Steam specials. I think they used to run on a Sunday to Stratford-on-Avon. And it used to be behind the likes of Mallard, Sir Nigel Gresley, or Flying Scotsman. One of them would be working that service out of there. Just by having a look around and think about things, all of a sudden you really got a layout that's achievable and interesting without eating up all your space. So yeah, sometimes your planning just takes a little thought in expanding, and just because you want to model the Great Western Railway doesn't mean you have to pick a Great Western station. Marylebone, it was a Great Central station, but they also shared that line with the Great Western, so there's no reason why you can't alter history a little bit and say, well, actually, the GWR built this station or whatever. So
yeah, you could also do the thing of like you could model a station based on its actual layout, but you can still then put the aesthetic of a different station in there. You can fuse these things together. At the end of the day, we're playing with model trains, and yes, they're fantastic models, but at the end of the day, it's yours. You do what you want with it, and the first person you need to please when you are designing this layout is you.
Definitely.
And if you're not doing that, then that's going to be your biggest fall down, because at the end of the day, if you're building it in your house, in your area, yeah, you can have people come around who are friends, and you might be, okay, well, I'm going to do all the points on the layout and you're going to run the trains, and then you can play like that. But at the end of the day, when you are by yourself and you're playing trains effectively, are you having fun? Are you enjoying it?
That's it. Because if you make that layout too big, and you're the only person operating it, you might get fed up with that layout really quickly when you realise that you can't run that mainline service in and out, and especially when it comes to like terminus, because a roundy's okay. You can just watch the trains just chase each other all day.
Yeah.
But if you were doing a terminus layout, like we said, if you went for Paddington, you try and run Paddington on your own as a modeler, running everything in and out of that fiddle yard. I can say from experience as running the real Paddington as a sigler, that is hard work.
Yeah.
At times is not enjoyable. So, if you're making that your hobby, I wouldn't want that myself. I don't think I would enjoy trying to run Paddington Station as a model on my own.
No.
If it was like I say, if it was a club, a group of people together, one person is sending you trains into Paddington, and your job is to accept those trains and send yours back out to them. And in the meantime, someone else is, working the throat and signaling in the middle. That's probably a lot more fun and enjoyable, and something you can do as a group, as a club, as friends. But yeah, when it comes to design, you've got to think about yourself
Mm.
and what are your limitations. And yes, you've got computer aided control that you could, add to it. But these are all extra things that are going to cost you money, that probably going to take time to add to it. So it's lots of considerations to take in before, like I say, before you cut that first piece of wood and build your layout.
It's also we've talked about using AnyRail, doing pen and paper and stuff like that. Never underestimate how much points take up on your layout. I never realized how much of a mistake I'd made until I started laying down points for like yards and for station throats and stuff like that. Because actually, whilst you might say, well, the point's this long, it's going to take up this much space, you put it into position and visually, they take up far more space than you ever think they're going to. And you have to really take that into consideration. So sit down on maybe your dining room table and lay out some of the points based on maybe the from the first point that you have to the last point in a line, because it will be expensive to have the whole thing up and go. But look at how far that's going to go and have that visual representation of, this is a 6-foot board and 4 foot of it is points. That leaves me with 2 foot for the trains. Maybe that's not a wise idea. Whereas if you cut it down and you are only doing, say, 2, 3, 4 platforms, that means, okay, I don't need 6 of the 12 points or something like that. You've massively reduced the area that the points take up. They take up so much more space than you ever think. So it's worth laying those down as well in front of you to understand.
Yeah, definitely. I am a visual planner. I struggle with AnyRail. I can't really, I have a Mac, so that's one of the reasons I can't use it these days. But when I did have a go at it on Windows, I struggled to get the curves and work it all out, and I just couldn't, it didn't work for me. And I was definitely a pen and paper kind of person, but even then, like as you say, it's so easy to just draw a little line between, have your 2 vertical lines and have a diagonal line between them and go, that's a set of points there. Well, actually, that little tiny set of points would only be about 10 centimeters in real life, where those points are actually taking out, 40 centimeters of track because of them going across.
Yeah.
So yeah, I myself like to plan visually by laying things out. Sometimes it's good to get a couple of your buildings, just get your sheets of plywood. You haven't cut it yet. We can just lay it out, even on a bit of, lining paper or wallpaper. Roll it out to how big you think your layout's going to be. Put some of your track components down. Pico do templates that you can print off for points. So you can print them off. You don't even have to go out and spend any money. You can just print it off, cut them out, lay them down, and see how it works for a track plan. Get a couple of your models, put them out, see how it visually feels, play around with things until you get something that suits you. That's how I like to do it, and that's sometimes how I get some of my ideas for a layout, because all of a sudden I'll look at it and go, that would look really good if that was just up on on a viaduct or a sort of a raised section. There was a road bridge going under there that looked really nice, and then I could have it. And sometimes you can't see that when you're just sort of drawing flat. But yeah, I'm definitely a pen and paper kind of person when it comes to designing, and that's usually how I do my things before moving on to building the layout. So yeah, when it comes to designing, I'm definitely a pen to paper kind of person. But yeah, it's just working with what you are comfortable using. And, if you're stuck with something, there's no reason why you can't ask for help, because there are places where you can go and find that. There's all, as we said before, people like to show their layouts off on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, places like that. And then you've got all your internet forums as well. So, you don't have to be afraid to ask for advice. You don't have to take that advice, because there are always, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but there's always a contradiction of how to do something.
Oh, so many times it happens where you'll get an opinion from one person and another person will tell you, well, that's wrong and it's this, and you get, I think Charlie at Chadwick has said it, where he's had signalmen approach him and say, this is how it's done in one way, and then another signalman turns around and goes, no, it's not done that way. So it becomes a line of, who do you listen to, and then basing it off the fact that, well, here's what I'm going to do with that based off the information I've been given.
Yeah, definitely. In Charlie's case, I'd say I'd go with the signalman that worked the Western region, because they're going to be more accurate. He models Western. Therefore, I take what the Western signalman says rather than what the Midland signalman says. That's just general advice for anything really. Western's always the right way. I
I think a lot of people would agree with that as well.
think they will get a lot of trouble for that.
Oh no, an apologies to you.
Um,
You can also seek like resources, like you said before. You have your Bible where you have loads of layout information, how to do stuff like that. So using the magazines, I know a lot of people don't necessarily like to go out and buy the magazines anymore. It's not the medium it once was, but there's certainly ways that you can get inspiration from purchasing those. I've talked about it a lot. Flickr is an outstanding source to be able to get information. Like I said, I'm using Flickr massively in the building of my new layout, especially on the first section that I'm building. So you have all of these things available to you that you can use, and it's just a simple case of making sure that you're using them and taking your time and writing it down and planning and planning and planning. If you think that you've got your layout nailed down, sit on it for a month, sit there and go, well, I could purchase this, and this to make sure it's ready, but don't purchase anything that's like, if you decided that you're having a turntable and then you want to take, and then you decide not to use it, don't purchase the turntable straight away, but sit on your layout ideas for a while. Don't go, that's my layout design, and then build your boards and lay your track that day, because you'll probably find you'll come back to it and you won't be as happy with it as you were half an hour ago.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest problem, and I think a lot of people fall into this trap, is the excitement of building that layout and then getting your trains running, and it's sort of, oh, I can't wait. And that's usually where you fall down because you run into a mistake that it's so obvious, but you've just completely missed it because you're completely blind to it because you just got that end objective. You just want to run your trains, and then it's the simple things like your baseboards.
Yeah,
deciding how you want to build your baseboard, because the common setup for that would be just your standard, as you say, a 2x4 board on a softwood frame, plywood top, bolt them together to various sizes, or however you plan to build your layout, and then you lay your track. So you put your track down, and you think, oh, I'd quite like a river just here, but now it's all flat. That, well, hang on, how are you going to get a river on there? Because it's all, you could cut a hole in it, but that means that you're going to have to cut into your frame and drop down a bit. That's probably going to affect the strength of your baseboard. So there are things like this that if you took a step back and thought about it and gone, I want a river on that, you could have just built 3 of your boards with flat top, and then the other one maybe an open frame construction that drops down a little bit to allow you to fit that bridge in to have that river on there. So yeah, it's so easy to want to rush into it and sort of dive in and run those trains. But yeah, you're right. You need to take a step back, have a think about it, and come back to it with a fresh pair of eyes and look at it and decide, is this for me or not? And like you say, there are all the various resources out there. You could put your track plan online onto a forum and ask what other people think, because someone might have had a similar idea and go, oh yeah, I thought about that, but actually that won't work because of this, and this. And it can be daunting to use forums. I used to use I think it was called New Railway Modelers forum, which obviously was full of beginners. And there was a lot of people on there that had sort of been bitten by some of the bigger forums, and they didn't like going on them because they felt that there was people on there that one would turn them and it'd be like a pack of wolves. They'd all turn on this one person. They would just come for a bit of advice. So they'd come to this forum to ask for it, and it's a bit disappointing to hear. But I've gone onto those bigger forums, and yeah, there are some people on there that are awkward, that don't come across very pleasant. But that's not everybody on there, and most people, I'd say, on these bigger forums do want to help you. And like you say, you don't have to take that person's advice, but it's always good to ask. And everyone has a different opinion and everything. So, I mean, I could say to you, how do you like to lay your track?
I like to lay my track with, I've tried both methods of track pins and on cork and gluing on cork, and I hated gluing on cork. I hated the gluing method above all, but then I was also using sleeper spacing, so I'd cut all the webbing, so I'd lost a lot of the integrity of things staying in place, and I just didn't enjoy it. I had a lot more fun drilling holes in track, putting a screw in or a nail, and then doing it that way, because it meant that I knew my track was secure and I wouldn't have the problem of it just suddenly popping off. So if I was doing a whole layout again, and if it wasn't for the fact that I wanted the section that I've done recently to be so pretty, I would have probably gone back to doing nails again if I could. And I know on my fiddle yard for sure, I use pins, I use nails, I use screws, like as much as I possibly can, rather than having to glue the track down. So that's my preferred method. How about yourself?
I would do the same in a fiddle yard, and I have done on this one. I'll use track pins because it's a fiddle yard. But out on the scenic section, I won't use pins. I think they're unsightly, they're ugly. And particularly on concrete sleeper, they spoil the effect because that stands out like a sore thumb, that metal round head poked in between, that beige plastic. So I will use copy decks. And again, I've done steeper spacing. I hate it. It's horrendous. It looks really nice when it's done. It's a horrible, horrible process. I just wish Pico would give us some sleeper space track. I really do. But the problem I have is when the glue dries, you can space those sleepers, but as the glue shrinks, it pulls the sleepers back out of lines. So you have to go back over and pull them back, and sometimes have to re-glue it, and it's a real pain. But the finished effect is a lot more attractive, I think, than having the track pins in there.
Yeah.
But that goes to prove my point that there is more than one way sometimes of doing something. So you can ask for advice. You don't have to take that advice. There could be a better way or an alternative way. And they're just things to look into and think about what works for you best. Because at the end of the day, as you say, this layout is for you. It's for no one else. If you want to put it online and show other people, put it online, show other people. If you don't want to do that, you want to keep it to yourself, that's up to you. Yes, if you put it online, it's open to criticism, but you don't have to pay attention to that criticism because usually it comes from someone, sat in an armchair that hasn't got a layout themselves, and there's probably a bit of envy in there or something like that. So, yeah, it's again just planning ahead and thinking about what's going to work best for you. And the other thing to think about as well is future projects that you might want to put on that layout, because you're not going to get everything done at once. As we said, this is a very expensive hobby. There are some things that you might like to add later on that are going to be an additional expense. So I would like to have train detection on my layout. I haven't got the equipment yet. I haven't even worked out quite what I'm going to use. But in preparation for it, I have been using insulated rail joiners between what I suspect I'm going to have each track section, so that I've got a rough idea of where it's going to go when I eventually do get around to installing it.
And that is the planning ahead side of it that is so key in this. And I'm glad that you've taken that, because that is something that I have also done. I don't know when, I don't know how, and I don't know what I'm going to use, but I have done the same thing where I have put insulated rail joiners so that I know that I can effectively have train detection as an add-on feature later down the line. So yeah, I'm glad we've both done the same thing. But you don't have to do that at this point anyway, like if you're just doing a model railway. But it is something that, I mean, for the cost of the rail joiners, you're going to be adding feeder wires to a lot of your track anyway. So I mean, it's no harm doing it, I think is a wise choice if you can afford the rail joiners.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. It's all down to preference and cost. And the reason I want it is because I am professionally a signalman, and so therefore I would like to run my layout as a signalman. And that's just my own preference because that's how I enjoy the railway. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. It's how you plan to enjoy your layout.
I think we could do another episode on this. So if that's something that people would like to hear more about this, go more in depth on it. I think we've barely scratched the surface, but at the same time, I'm aware that we're sort of pushing on a little bit with time, and I'm not trying to cut the conversation short to the point of killing it. But I do think that we've covered a lot of the main thing that we're saying here is take your time, ask for friends, really sit on the idea before you go out and purchase hundreds of pounds worth of wood, build it, and then 6 months later find out you don't like it, because I did that. I changed the baseboards on my layout after I'd built it, and I had to do it in situ as well. So I was cutting bits of board away whilst it was still up and there was track on it. So you have to bear those things in mind. So I think that's a really good stopping point. And if you would like to hear more on this discussion, please let James and myself know, because we have really enjoyed going into detail on it. But it's such a vast thing. Layouts in general, planning, building, and stuff like that. There's so many different things that you can talk about. I feel like we've scratched the surface a little bit and basically we're saying take your time. Remember, it's for you, for nobody else, and build it to how you want to do it. And whether it's a case of you squish everything down and have it really compact and have lots in one area, or have a look at maybe future-proofing it. Oh, I remember one thing I did want to say about future-proofing, James, thank you for bringing that up. One way you can future-proof it, especially if you decide that you're going to build a depot layout, the one thing I can say to you that I think would be a really useful thing for you to do is whatever you decide to build, make sure that behind it, you put in 2 running lines. And that's simply so that if you build this depot layout and you decide, I want to now build the rest of the layout to attach to it, the best bit of advice I can give you is, although on a depot, you're not going to be using those 2 running lines right now, put them in so that when you decide to add to it, you can put points in to join those 2 running lines, whether it's off board, somewhere else, that's fine. But it means that you can then have your depot layout with 2 running lines for the rest of the layout running behind it. So you can effectively have the best of both worlds. You put 2 small running lines in right at the back of the layout so that you can connect up to a full room layout later down the line. That's something that I would definitely urge people to do if you can. If you can fit 2 lines in with enough space between that and your depot, I would massively, massively recommend it, because it is something that I wish I had done on my turntable layout.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's I mean, that takes us back to sort of the beginning where we're sort of saying, start small and plan to work bigger later. And that's something I did when I had a go at TT, and I built the TT depot layout. And at the front of it, I had 2 dead lines that didn't go anywhere. They were just representing the main line in front of the depot. But the plan was that if I wanted to, I could add on some extra boards in the future and have trains running on the main lines while still operating the depot. Future-proofing and thinking about where you're going to go with the layout is always a real bonus when it comes to it. But yeah, as you say, this is a massive subject. We could be here till the cows come home talking about this. I think we'll square it up here. And yeah, if people have enjoyed it, want us to talk more about it, or there's certain aspects that they'd like us to cover, then yeah, let us know. But otherwise, I think we'll take a short break and come back for our usual outro.
This world we live in is a wondrous and fascinating place. We stand on the brink of greatness and a chance to make a real difference in this world. 2 people who are not making a difference in the world are James and Sam. So great are their egos that you can now support them on Patreon from $5 per month to just show your support. You too can watch the model railway world burn under their narcissistic natures. Head on over patreon.com/Model Rail Replacement Podcast.
So we are back. Before we go, I think we need to talk about that reel.
Oh, I'd forgot about that. Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's address the Pikachu in the room.
So yeah, this has gone absolutely. I didn't expect this to happen, but so obviously we like to make ourselves aware, a presence aware, and we've started the Instagram account for the Model Rail Replacement Podcast. And it's growing nicely. It's got about 260 odd followers at the moment. It's, we're gradually getting there, but we're still trying to get ourselves noticed. So we like to do some silly reels every now and again just to get people's attention. And we find that the best ones are if you just steal someone else's reel and then add your own on. So I've done one where the question was, what makes a guy undateable? And the girl answers Pokemon. And obviously... those who listen know that Sam quite like Pokemon, so then I made slander to his name. I won't repeat what I said there because it does have swearing. I thought it bleeped it out, but it didn't. It just makes the bleep noise, and you still hear me swear.
Yeah.
But it's just gone mental.
It's because I don't mind. I found it hilarious when I watched it, and I think what makes it even more funny is the amount of people who then shared it, because quite a few people have shared it who have tagged us in it, but there's a fair amount of people who have shared it and we have no idea who they are or what they do. So there's people out there sharing it, and I'm like, how do people even know? Like, the reference is actually really short. It's actually more about James saying that's Sam, but it's just bonkers how it's. I could use
Yeah,
the
I
term.
do. I do. Yeah, it's crazy because you look at the stats and it's 1.8% of our followers. This video's reached, and then the rest is 98.2 of 9,580 accounts. So you're kind of going, I don't think everyone's aware that you like Pokemon. I mean, maybe they just get the reference of the joke, but it's quite amusing. But yeah, it's like 740 likes, and um, yeah, it's just I like the fact that it's making people more aware of our hobby as well. And I mean, the obviously the point of the joke was that I'm the one playing with the model trains, and I'm saying someone else is undateable. But
It was a really well executed reel. So yeah, well played. And I mean, it's got our name out there, so I can't really complain about it.
yeah, but yeah, if you are listening and you haven't found our channel on Instagram, yeah, go have a look and watch that reel yourself. And then we've got some other things on them, and we do like to keep you updated by using the Instagram account. So yeah, go find it and follow us on it. Model Rail Replacement Podcast, obviously. That's if you're wondering how.
Oh yeah, that's the most important thing. Talking about social media, we always like to give a shout out to a particular channel that has drawn us into them over the course of the last week or so. Usually I go first, but I'm taking this moment to say, James, who have you got for us this week?
So this week I am going to go for the 009 Society, and that's because they have just recently decided to revamp and sort of put their YouTube channel out there. They've also done the same with their Instagram account. So I think there's been a change of staffing, shall I say, at the 009 Society, and someone has taken over the social media side of things, and they're putting it a lot more out there, trying to get people aware of the 009 Society. So obviously, if you're not aware of it, it is for narrow gauge modelers that model in 00 gauge or 009. It's a very nice society. It's only, I think it's about £20 a year or something like that if you want to be a member, which I am. And you get a magazine every month. And there's a nice few articles in there, people's layouts, meetups, and things like that. And yeah, so yeah, they're opened up their YouTube channel again, and they've started uploading videos. And so now you get nice little videos of people's 009 layouts, which is always very nice to look at. So that's why I picked the 009 Society this week. How about you, Sam?
So I'm going to give that a follow, as is tradition. For me, this one, now the videos aren't in English, but they do add English subtitles off their own back. So they're not the auto-generated ones from YouTube. They do have their own subtitles on it. It's a YouTube channel who have done that European thing that we talked about in a previous episode, where they've actually foregone and gone for tighter radius curves that aren't as realistic to incorporate much more in a much smaller space on their layout. So it's a really fascinating layout. But the YouTube channel is called Freestyle MOBA. That's MOBA. And they recently, I say recently, 5 months ago, they did a 2-year time lapse from when they started their layout, because it's been going for a while, but from the beginning to where it is now. And the transformation is insane what they've achieved on this layout in the 2 years. It's a lot of block detection. They call it phantom yards or something like that. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they have a lot of phantom stations, I think they call them, where they have areas where the trains just stop and another train can pass based on the block detection and the like the iTrain stuff that James and I were talking about earlier. It's a really beautiful layout. The scenery that they do is insane. And if you're going to watch anything, go watch the 2-year time lapse from start to finish of where the layout is now. And it's just really, really interesting. So I'd recommend it to anyone, because you can see what you can achieve in such a small space, which fits in perfectly what we've talked about today.
Yeah, I've just found the channel, and that does look very cool. I'm going to be giving that a watch. It's German. I always do like a bit of German railway. Bit of, we can see there's working cars in there too. So yeah. Oh yeah, there's a 2-year time lapse. Yep, I'm going to be looking for that one then. I'll have a little watch of that later.
Excellent. Off back of that, if you decide to go over and give any of these channels a watch, please make sure that you say that we sent you. We like to make sure that the community knows that people are recommending them and stuff like that. So please give us a shout out, I think is the short version of what we're asking for, and just let them know that we sent you. During the break we had between recording, it turns out that James has just had a very, very interesting parcel. So I don't know how much of him we're really going to have now, because I think he's officially checked out. And I'm saying that in a joking way, because I know that if I was sat there with what James is sitting with, I probably wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I'd be trying to wrap this up quickly.
But firstly, I need to correct you. It's plural. It's parcels.
Sorry. Oh, so we had the joke yesterday of James had only had one email to say that it was coming, but then later on he got another 4. So I was like, is it one parcel? Is it several parcels? How are they doing it?
It's that 3 parcels. And then one of them's definitely got two locos in because it's really heavy compared to the other 2. So and they've used massive boxes as well. But yeah, I think we just talked about it at the beginning of the show. But as we've got to the end of the show, they have arrived. My Curacao Class 66s, 4 of them at least. There's still a few more to come. I'm not massively rich. It's just that I sold all my other models to buy these. So before anyone thinks I'm flexing or anything like that. But yes, so very exciting. There's a couple of GBRF locos, a DB and an EWS one turn up. So yeah, very excited about that. But go back to the social media stuff. If anyone wants us to have a look at things that they think are worth having a shout out, let us know and we'll investigate. And if we think, yeah, that's pretty good, we'll give it a shout out as well. And also, don't forget, if you've got anything upcoming that you'd like us to announce that's coming in the future, such as model railway shows, then please let us know. We're more than happy to give them a little shout out. So, for example, the Diesel Electric Modelers United Society will be having their usual exhibition in June. I think it's June 15th, possibly June 16th. I have to double check on the 16th, but definitely on the 15th. And they usually hold this in Sutton Coldfield in the town hall there. And it is just a collection of layouts that feature exclusively diesel or electric modeling. I went last year for the first time because usually they have it on a weekend when I'm working. It was absolutely great show, and it's not too difficult to get to. It's just outside of Birmingham. We're gonna have a guest, I think, next week, who will also be appearing at the Diesel Electric Modelers show. So it all fits in quite nicely, really.
It does indeed. So we'll leave you hanging with who that's going to be. Also, don't forget that as well as getting hold of us on our Model Rail Replacement Podcast Instagram, you can also get hold of us on Instagram for our own personal accounts. You can get hold of me at Emperors_Path. You can also find me on Facebook and on YouTube as Emperors Path. James, if people want to get hold of you, how can they find you?
I'm still known as the Western Signalman on the YouTube, Instagram, or through email of westernsignalman@outlook.com. And also remember that you can get hold of both of us through the Model Rail Replacement Podcast on Instagram or through our email. I've said that one in a very strange way. Email. Model Rail RP, that's Romeo Papa, at outlook.com. I think that ties us up nicely for today. So I'll say the usual. Hopefully we've been entertaining, informative, and have replaced your model railway, if only just for a little bit. I've been James, and with me has been Sam. Good night.
This service terminates here. Please ensure you take all of your personal belongings with you.